I'd like to, if any Wild fans are listening, I'd like to point out you were 1 for 7 on the power play. The refs didn't cost you this game. Sorry.
Let's get into last night. 4 hours from start to finish. How was, it had to have been, the atmosphere scenes in St. Paul looked incredible. We expected that, right? How did that go as it went into overtime and the second over? What was it like in the building as that one unfolded into the wee hours of Thursday morning?
There's about 3 sections of fans right along between the blue lines, like the really good seats. And for whatever reason, they were standing the whole game last night.
Oh.
I felt bad for those guys. I mean, not only almost 1 a.m. our time when the game gets done, but then you're standing in the emotions, and I will say the "Ref You Suck" chant that made its way from Dallas to Minnesota. I heard that a lot. Heard that a lot at the hangar, and I heard that a lot at Grand Casino Arena last night. I'd like to, if any Wild fans are listening, I'd like to point out you were 1 for 7 on the power play. The refs didn't cost you this game. Sorry.
Hey, Jess, I tweeted about this yesterday. I think it's not a Stanley Cup playoff game if the fans at the home arena anywhere in the NHL do not make that chant at least once. I saw it in every game we watched yesterday. I think it's a prerequisite now.
Absolutely. And I kind of joked that I heard it from the Dallas fans when they were winning, game 2, 4-2, and then hearing it from the Wild fans last night when, again, 7 chances on the power play, 5 of them in the third period and in overtime. At some point you are what you are. They're obviously hurting from the loss of Mats Zuccarello. That's pretty clear, because you saw in game 1 what he can do and how that top power play unit just clicks with him. But, the question now for Minnesota fans, where's number 97? That guy that they're going to pay $17 million next year, had a great game 1 like the rest of the team did, and just hasn't clicked for him since then.
Well, I think he took away your next
question.
Yeah,
you kind of did, Jeff.
See, I don't know if you saw his reaction.
Go further into it.
Well, Jess, you mentioned Zuccarello, and the question I was going to ask you is Zuccarello to Boldy and Kaprizov as, let's say, Kucherov is to Gensel and Braden Point. I know it's a lofty comparison, but I mean, is it kind of similar when you mention his name and you talk about the power play?
Here's what I'll say about Mats Zuccarello. He missed all of October. He was out with an injury. He returned right about deer hunting season time. You being a northern Wisconsin guy, you would know how that works. Mm-hmm. Without Mats Zuccarello in the month of October, they had 12 games. They won 3 of them.
Oh.
He comes back in November, and they went on an absolute tear, and basically locked up a playoff series by the time the Quinn Hughes trade happened. So he is really a catalyst, and the chemistry he has with Kaprizov is just unbelievable. And you really saw that last night, going 1 for 7 on the power play. Not only not having Zuccarello, but not really being able to figure out who fits in that top power play unit. They used Bobby Brink for a few shifts. They use Vladimir Tarasenko for a few power plays. For whatever weird reason, and maybe it's naive of me to think because they're both Russian it should work, but Tarasenko and Kaprizov have developed absolutely no on-ice chemistry. It's just bewildering because they're both great scorers, but it doesn't work with the two of them together, and we saw that again last night.
Yeah, Jess, curious. I know we haven't seen anything really post-whistle in this series yet, but I'm curious if you see the social media. I was being sarcastic, by the way, Owen. I know you tell me to hold my sarcasm
Sam,
sign
we
up.
We actually say Sam needs to hold up the sarcasm sign just to let everyone know he's clearly tongue in cheek.
Yes.
Or he's our shift to serve.
When you get in the playoffs, social media gets crazy, right? Fans are very passionate, but this one, at least for me, has been one of the craziest that I've seen. I'm curious if you think Dallas fans think Minnesota's diving and they're dirty and they're going after their best players. Minnesota fans think Dallas is dirty and diving and going after. Does either team have a say, or is this just playoff hockey on social media today?
I think this is just playoff hockey. I will say, if you own a Jamie Benn jersey, I wouldn't wear it around the Twin Cities today. Not a real popular dude, with the hit on Boldy, and then got away with a high stick on Yurov right after that. So every series, every team needs an enemy. Every fan base needs an enemy.
Marcus Foligno.
I kind of thought, I thought it was going to be Tyler Myers after the elbow on Zuccarello in game one, and you're seeing how costly that was. But no, Jamie Benn has quickly established himself as public enemy number one here in the state of hockey.
And I want to add on to that, Jess, is that to the credit of both teams, players and coaches, they're not using those excuses at all.
Absolutely.
Right? And every post game, every interview, nobody's saying, hey, we didn't like, there's clearly calls on both teams that we don't like, whether it's Dallas or Minnesota. Somebody was complaining on social media. They thought the refs had a rough night. And I said, honestly, considering the emotion and intensity of this series, I actually thought they handled it rather well, given the circumstances. And both teams, nobody's got, obviously they're trying to work the refs and talk about, I want you to do this, or, hey, we like this or whatever, but nobody's going, hey, this is just causing us to lose because they're making bad calls.
To me, the quintessential playoff hockey moment, at least as it relates to officiating, Matt Duchene runs over Marcus Foligno, drives his head into the ice. I don't think it was necessarily intentional. I think it was just continuation of a play. Initially, he gets a 5-minute major for it. Then they go and look at it and say, oh, it's no penalty. And then, of course, because this is the way the hockey gods work, Duchene scores on the power play right after that. I mean, it's just...
And then you go back to game 2, and we're all sitting there going, the Stars scored a goal. Mikko Rantanen and gave Joel Eriksson just a little bit of a like, how do you do? They attacked the celebration, which happened in the last regular season game, and the Stars are defending themselves during a celly and going, how did we end up on the penalty kill? So it's fun, it's weird, but that's what makes a great series. Honestly, to me, the big thing is, we said this about Stars Colorado last year. It's a shame this is the first round because these two teams deserve to have gotten through another opponent before this theater.
I mean, that's a whole other conversation about the way the playoffs are structured.
Yeah.
Whether it should be just 1 through 16, you seed it, and if you have to fly across the country in the first round, so be it. But yeah, I mean, we joked about it before. Some teams didn't find out until the last game of the regular season who they were playing. We've been talking about a Wild Stars series since like before Christmas. I think, maybe one of the first questions for Quinn Hughes when he got here was, what do you think about Dallas in the playoffs? I mean, it's just,
are you excited to play them?
This series is coming. And I heard you guys before I came on talking about Duchene, no secrets there from either team. I had forgotten this, but he talked about it, I think, before game 2. He spent 4 years, I think it was, with John Hines in Nashville. So, if there's one guy that John Hines doesn't have to scout, who knows what's coming.
That's a good point.
It's Duchene, and he's really established himself as a prime player in this series.
I think it's kind of like practice what you preach, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of?
Yeah, I think so.
I want to throw in one more. Do we got to go to a break, Ryan?
No, we
go
got a couple more minutes. Jess.
Hey, Jess, I want to. I was thinking a couple different things, and I don't know where we are in this whole thing, but what happens now? Like, does Hines have to come out and talk about those penalties? And if they do that, because to me, the identity of this team is that game. That's the way that they believe that they can win this series. So how does Hines handle this?
Every playoff series is different. And John Hines wasn't here 3 years ago when they played Dallas. But if you remember that series, the Wild lost it by being in the penalty box too much. So
Yes.
This is a new year. Everything's going to be different. And yet sometimes you kind of are who you are. Now you're seeing some of the same stuff and taking unfortunate penalties. The guy I really feel bad for, and Hines talked about this. He talked to him right after the game yesterday. Danila Yurov, who's a rookie, who's still trying to find his way, making the transition from the KHL. He takes the bad penalty in game 1 that leads to the Stars' only goal, Robo, which is that beautiful backhander that got, the momentum and got the crowd back into it at the hangar, temporarily anyway. And then, of course, he tries to flip out of the zone last night. It goes into the crowd. That's the delay of game penalty that Dallas winds up scoring on. He's a kid with a lot of promise. So that, I think, was John Hines' task number 1 after the game last night, is to make sure he's in the right headspace mentally. Nobody blames him, any of that. Again, 7 power play chances. You score on, one of those in the third period, you probably win that game with a 4-2 lead late.
What's funny is the penalties aren't even, like, for how rough it's been. It's not like we're seeing roughing and elbowing. Most of the penalties are hooks and high sticks and delay games and tripping. So
too many men on the ice.
Yeah, maybe it's just a lot of those. Maybe it's just trying too hard. I'm not really sure. But Jess, I'm curious if you think this series goes 7 games? And do you think there are any more of those outliers like game 1? Because, sometimes you see it. Series is tight, and then you have that one where it's just randomly 5-0 and the other team doesn't show up. Do you think it's every game's going to be this tight, and do you think it goes the distance?
I think if we have another outlier game, if Minnesota or Dallas wins the next game 6-1, we're not going to see a 7-game series. If Dallas comes out and handles them and is going back home up 3-1, I think Dallas closes this one out. Likewise, if Minnesota comes out and wins, 6-1 in game 4, I could see them winning the next 2 and moving on if they figure out the special teams and they figure out how to not need so many special teams. But no, this one's got 7 games written all over it to me, all things being equal. And we knew this. I mean, we knew these 2 teams were what they were. Again, we've been talking about this series seemingly forever. And that's what makes it fun is, let's keep playing. This is too much fun to let it end that quickly.
I want to quickly say that goal for Eriksson Ek last night, Matt Boldy was just a dude. Weaving through the whole team, and I mean, what a play! And he's so good. Like we celebrate these guys when they play for Team USA, and then we poo-poo on them because they're playing against the Stars. But let me ask you this: am I being overly reactive when I say that Jesper Wallstedt is your guy for a long time? Because I think he's shown already incredible composure and poise for having never played a playoff series before this. He looks like the guy. I know that it's 2-1 Stars, but honestly, and all due respect to Philip Gustafsson, I can't see them making a change. Can you?
No, absolutely not. And you saw in that first penalty kill in overtime yesterday, just absolutely calm, no rebounds. You saw that in game 1. He's eating up all the pucks, not giving away second chances. He kind of laughed about it last night. He said, hey, my first playoff overtime, good to get that experience out of the way. Obviously, you wanted to win the game. But, there's absolutely nothing that you would pin on goaltending. The other thing I will say, since you mentioned that Eriksson Ek goal, Boldy basically takes 4 guys with him. Well, 5 if you include Ottinger. And I went back and looked at the replay. There was about a skate and maybe that much of his pad still in the crease for Ottinger by the time he got pulled so far out of position that Eriksson Ek basically just had a tap in.
Okay, Jess, let's see how good you are. So when you went back and you watched that clip, and Boldy split basically 3 Dallas players, just about to the top of the circle. Did you see what he did with his left leg?
I did not.
Okay, you're not that good then. Go back. I'm not gonna. I want you to go back and watch it, and I want you to tell me the last guy that he had to elusively put that one down.
Yeah.
I want you to watch what he does with his left foot. Dilapidate?
You're just distracting him now, shift to server.
I didn't go to bed till 6:45, Sam. I want you to go back because to me, it summed up the whole play of what he does. I mean, it's just It's
an insane puck protection detail what he did there.
It's unreal.
Jess, lastly is what's your travel schedule like before Game 5? Now I know we have to play Saturday's Game 4 first, but are you coming in on Monday? Are you flying on Sunday? Because obviously Game 5 is going to be a normal 7 o'clock. The reason why I bring this up is we've got an extra chair in the studio and an extra mic, and we can avoid all the technical issues.
And Junos was taking care of us. We got a bottle of bourbon whiskey here, by the way.
Beers.
We would love to have you come in studio for a little bit on Monday if you're around for our daily show that day before Game 5.
I will let you know my travel schedule. I will say this. If Game 5 is an elimination game, I'm coming to Dallas. If Minnesota wins the next one and it's 2-2 going into Game 5, we're going to save the money potentially for a Game 7, and I will be covering Game 5 remotely. So we'll wait and see on that one. We'll find out Saturday whether I will be in Dallas for Game 5.